There's a big difference between a risk and a threat.
Sure.
It is a risk, of course. I mean, things happen in conflict, and that could be one of them. As a threat, no, I don't think Russia wants to attack the United States, and I don't think the United States wants to attack Russia. Indeed, I suspect that Washington, Moscow, and Paris are on the hotline trying to make sure that things will be deconflicted pretty much in the same way that Israeli airstrikes in Syria, which have been going on for months and months, have never posed any particular problem with the Russians, because the Russians have always made sure that they wouldn't get into the way of Israel's aircraft, and the Israelis have made sure not to strike any Russian assets. And this is the sort of logic which would normally prevail in this situation.
Now, I say that Western leaders are mulling strikes at the moment. I'm talking about the UK, the United States and France. Of all three, Emmanuel Macron sounds the most convinced of the case to go to war in Syria. What are the French objectives here?
Well, the French drew a red line last year, which was that if chemical weapons were used by the Syrian regime against civilian populations, there would be a French response. So France's reaction is to some extent predetermined. And President Trump is actually pretty much in the same situation, since he stated at the time of the bombing, which the US did against the Syrians after a chemical attack, that the United States wasn't out there to go to war in Syria, except for Daesh and chemical weapons. So the case is pretty clear in Washington and Paris. London, of course, is another story. As I understand it, as we're speaking, Cabinet is still discussing the issue. I would not be surprised if London did join in.
Would France act alone if it had to?
Maybe, but I don't think that is the situation in which we are. The news from Washington, by the way, literally minutes before we started speaking, was that the Americans have also considered that they now have proof. And they've gone actually one step further than President Macron, because President Macron said that we had proof in terms at least of the use of chlorine. And the Americans are now saying that the samples that they have point to both chlorine and a nerve gas.
What would be the point of these strikes? Is it possible, as Macron and May say, to degrade the chemical weapons capabilities of President Assad? Is it possible to stop him from doing this again, if it was him?
It depends a great deal on the scale of the target set, which is due to be struck. Artillery units, helicopter units, some specialist aircraft units would be natural targets. If you wanted to eliminate the ability of Syria's armed forces to use chemical weapons, it's actually easier to do that than to try to winkle out every single chemical weapon, particularly if you're talking about chlorine, which is unfortunately extremely easy to produce in an ordinary building with very, very basic materials. I suspect that some of your viewers, when they were in high school, did this themselves. I certainly did. So, yes, you would go after the military units.
The Russians say that Eastern Ghouta, this region close to Damascus that has been under rebel control for a long time now, is now back in Assad's hand. Is it inevitable that he will win the war?
It certainly looks as if he's winning it. I'm not sure what's left of Syria after this particular victory. The rebels have lost, but I'm not sure that Assad has won anything that I can notice as a single, united, functional country called Syria, which is currently divided into various slices and pieces with forces from Iran, from Turkey, from Russia, from the United States, special forces from France. Syria?
Is this the end of Syria as a state? A state that's not much older than Israel, is
it? Bashar seems to have been extremely effective in destroying the Syrian state.
François Heisbourg, thank you very much.
Thank you.